There are 6 retirement lessons that you also need to know from the Gen X generation who has recently been retiring, and this is really aimed at younger folks who hope to be able to retire one day. According to the CFP board, which is an organization for financial planners, 43% of Gen Xers believe that they had plenty of time to save when they were younger, and 53% say that they wish they had started planning for retirement earlier. And Gen Xers are a good example of kind of what happens if you don't really prepare for retirement early enough. Because in a separate survey from Cerulli Associates, they found out that 2/3 of Gen Xers with 401k accounts have less than $100,000 saved for retirement, and 4 out of 5 of them say they are not particularly confident that they will be able to carry on their present living standard when retired. So that's where this list comes in that we talked about earlier about giving up certain things in retirement, especially if this is you and you have a very limited amount of retirement funds. You're going to have no choice but to give some of these things up. And the last thing anybody wants to do is to make a downgrade in their living standard regardless of what phase of life you're in, but especially during retirement. According to the CFP board, only 37% of Gen Xers said that they are satisfied with the amount that they have saved for retirement. So here are 6 lessons that you need to know if you are younger and you want to be able to retire one day. Number 1 is that failing to plan leads to stress. When you're young, it seems like you have plenty of time and that you're just never going to have to worry about this. You know, retirement is one day later down the road, and I can totally relate to that. I was one of those young people that thought the same exact way, like I never have to worry about retirement. This is so far away. I'm so poor. I'm so broke. I'm never going to be able to retire anyhow, so who cares? Yeah, trust me, I've been there. A lot of Gen Xers said that their financial mistakes have reduced their sense of financial security and have caused them stress and anxiety because they started their retirement planning too late. Number 2 is that they did better in life than in money. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means that when Gen Xers were surveyed about different aspects of their life, like raising children or becoming a homeowner or earning an education, a lot of them were satisfied with the level of education that they earned or being able to become a homeowner, or they're proud of the family that they raised, but yet only 37% were satisfied with their retirement savings versus 78% are proud of the family that they raised. So while I do believe the saying that family and health is wealth, there's more to it than just that, obviously, if you want to have a comfortable retirement. And not to say that these other things aren't important, raising a good family, becoming a homeowner, or educating yourself on important topics in life. It's just that it's not the only thing that matters, and planning for your retirement matters a lot if you want to be able to actually do it successfully one day. The third one is missed opportunities. In addition to their regrets about starting to plan for retirement too late, many Gen Xers say that they regret the financial irresponsibility of their youth. 1/3 said that they didn't save enough in their 20s or 30s, including those who said they didn't participate in a workplace retirement plan or didn't take advantage of an employer match. 29% of Gen Xers said they regretted spending beyond their means during the early part of their career, while 27% said that they took on too much debt, and 20% said they regretted not investing in the stock market. And really, all of those things are some major financial mistakes, and I'm all about learning from other people's mistakes and not repeating them yourself. The fourth life advice thing is misconceptions. Misconception in your earlier years that you have plenty of time to start saving. But there are other misconceptions as well, like 23% saying that back in the day they thought a credit card was a good way to sustain their lifestyle. And 18% said they thought budgeting was something that only concerned people struggling to make ends meet. Also not thinking that I needed an emergency fund, and that financial setbacks only happen to others. So basically kind of going through life with the mentality, as long as I can pay off the credit card bill, doesn't matter. As long as I have enough money, even though I'm living paycheck to paycheck, it doesn't really matter. Which we know now today that those are obviously huge financial mistakes, but financial education was not nearly as abundant 30 or 40 years ago as it is now. The fifth thing to know is that setbacks do happen. Even if you are planning well for retirement and you're doing your best to save, you're going to have some setbacks in life. That's just the way it happens for everybody. Nobody lives a perfect life. For example, say you were an investor back in 2008 and you bought a lot of real estate. And you bought it at the top of the bubble thinking that, well, I'm going to be a big real estate investor and have a bunch of money for my retirement. And then a year later, the market goes kaput and you lose 50% of the value that you have in your portfolio. And depending on how leveraged you are, maybe you lose everything. That's a perfect example of how even when you're kind of trying to do the right thing, you can lose big time. Same thing with the stock market back then. Stock market went down tremendously. Same thing with the dot-com bubble back in the early 2000s. Big losses happened then. And a lot of Gen Xers regret not being more prepared for challenges like a job loss or personal issues like a health crisis or the death of a loved one when they were making financial decisions in their youth. It's just like that, guys. When you're younger, you always feel like nothing like that can ever happen to me. That's kind of like the default mode of the young person, right? And it's easy to think that way because you're still young and literally nothing like that probably ever has happened to you. So it's kind of unthinkable to comprehend that it might. One perfect example that we can look at right now today is the cost of housing. 57% of Gen Xers said that better planning would have lessened the financial toll of their housing costs. And if they would have saved more at a younger age, then that would have helped make up the gap between their income that has failed to keep up with the cost of living. And that's where it comes into having an emergency fund and not living paycheck to paycheck and living below your means. Because then when you have an unexpected increase in like your housing costs, for example, it's much easier to absorb that versus somebody who was stretching to the max before that. And then they get this increase in housing costs, whatever it is, say it goes up by 20%, because property taxes and insurance, or maybe your rent has just gone up along with your utility bills and everything else. Well, now all of a sudden, if you were living paycheck to paycheck before you got that increase, you're faced with a situation of how in the world am I going to pay for this? And the sixth and probably the most important tip to understand from this is all of those previous mistakes that we just talked about, they add up over the long run and they have a tremendous effect on how retirement is going to look for you down the road. When a lot of Gen Xers look at how much money they lost by making some of these poor financial choices, a lot of them estimate that they've lost nearly $100,000, and 35% of them say that the losses are probably somewhere between $100,000 and $499,000. And 13% say their bad financial decisions have cost them over $500,000 that they would have had extra in retirement. Imagine that, guys. A lot of these Gen Xers are retiring with $100,000 or less right now in their 401k. And imagine what having an extra $500,000, even extra $200,000 would mean in retirement for people like that. For me, the biggest takeaway as a younger guy, but still getting up there in age, I'm going to be 40 in a couple of years, so I'm not that young. I'm still not retirement age, but I'm definitely old enough to really start thinking about this stuff seriously. And even if you're only 28 or 18, it doesn't really matter because really, like I said before, the earlier you start thinking about it and planning for it, the easier things are going to be for you in the end. And that seems to be the biggest takeaway from all of these lessons learned from Gen Xers. And then maybe going back to the beginning of this video, if you plan well enough and early enough, you might not have to stop financial support for your children. You might not have to get rid of the RV or the boat that's costing you a ton of money because you planned for it and you can easily afford it in retirement. Doing those things are for people who didn't plan well for retirement and are not retiring at the level that they wish they had. That's kind of the whole premise of this video. And I get it. It's easy to have goals in life. It's easy to want certain things and think that you are doing the right things to plan for it. But life does happen and plans never go to plan. So it is important to adjust accordingly along the way. But you need to be hitting your goals somewhat consistently when it comes to saving and investing for your future to ensure that you are going to be able to live the good life when it's your turn to retire. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.